Good morning and thank you for joining me. My name is Will Hall and I'm going to be talking today about AWS Cloud Account Security and how we're going to do that with Cloudsploit, Prowler and GitLab CI. Now, for many of you, you may have kind of come along to this and thought, well, I already have some security on my account, and is that not true that it extends everywhere I go? And unfortunately, there is this idea of a shared security model with most cloud security accounts where you have a responsibility for your own security alongside them having a responsibility to keep that some part of that security true. And you can look up the shared security model to understand that. But what I'm really going to be focusing on today is understanding parts to do with your account security and how you can improve that to the maximum value. So we have automating cloud security with Cloudsploit and Prowler. Now, as you can see, what I've got here is a shoehorn and a rainbow. Why have you got a shoehorn and a rainbow, I ask you? Well, that's because I'm going to shoehorn analogies about rainbows into the next minute. Now, the really interesting thing I think about rainbows is that they don't really exist. So they're actually a kind of figment of your imagination, or not figment of, a trick of the light. You only see a rainbow because the sun is falling at a specific angle, 42 degrees, shining through some refractive light parts, which are going to be raindrops, and then show you those colours. And it's why that you can never get to the end of a rainbow, because it's just a visual illusion for showing us the different colours that are in white light. Now, why am I talking about rainbows when I'm talking about account security? What I'm trying to suggest is that the whole world of account security and security is happening all around you all the time. You just don't always see it. And what these tools that I'm going to talk about today, Cloudsploit and Prowler, are really doing is refracting back the security that are happening all around you all of the time and showing you what your posture is all the time. Now, as we kind of already know, security is not really just a single event that we're going to complete at a specific time. It's actually a continual mesh that we're wrapping around the services and solutions that we want. And this is why I thought this is a really nice idea of we have all of these interconnected parts, especially in the breadth and depth of services that AWS is able to offer. And what we're really trying to do is merge all of these kind of things together so that we get a continual solution that's going to work for what we want. But it's not a single event. It is not a single checkbox of saying we are secure on whatever today is at 11 o'clock and moving forwards with that. We are continually attempting to improve that security, and we're continually changing the solutions that are running on top of our architecture to reflect that. Now, in many ways, I think of DevSecOps, which is where I operate a lot, as being the process of security. And understanding the process of how we're going to deliver security is really going to start adding additional value to what people want in the end. And I really think that's a compelling story to understand that security is really part of a process, not a single operation that's completed once or a single team. It's all part of the process of delivering these solutions that are fitting the business need. And you have to be willing in that process to continually adapt to the needs of what you want. Now, it's not good enough to just say, well, we're going to have one part of security happening at one point. We might put in some firewall security. We're actually going to move towards the idea that we need to continually assess and change the security posture that we have to adapt to the changing needs of our tools and our teams. My name's Will Hall and I work for a company called HeleCloud. At the moment, my role is as a management consultant in DevOps. And really what that's trying to do is understand that a lot of the conversations we have are about the business solutions that we need for DevOps. And being able to offer that as a process is something that's really compelling as we move forwards with that evolution of DevOps and process. I'm also a GitLab hero and a Docker community leader, a dad and guitarist, and you can follow me on Twitter on HMWill, and you can also look me up on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Now, why are you saying it? Why are HeleCloud kind of generating this kind of content? And it's in many ways it complements what we already do. So we're an AWS Premier Consulting Partner, and what that means is that we are the highest level of AWS partner, and we become involved in a lot of augmentation of AWS services and delivering real business value on top of what the AWS platform. We're also very much involved in running cloud compliance, whether that be regulatory compliance, industry level compliance, some kind of business compliance, or best practice compliance. And that's part of the solutions that we offer for people, alongside doing kind of security audits and gap analysis with our security engineering. And we actually have managed services and compliance services who can work alongside that. And I wanted to just mention a little bit about the HeleCloud culture and how that's kind of driving the values that we think back to customers. Now, we're really keen to be able to, very, very similarly to Amazon, to be able to actually deliver genuine business outcomes, and understanding that the technologies that we're going to offer are delivering part of a tool. Now, we also like to think that we're able to lead because we are continually learning. So our next to are leading and learning, and because we're continually learning, we're striving to be able to deliver the best solution that we can and really be able to lead from a forefront into delivering great value for our customers. And we also think that it's important that we belong both as collectively as a company inside HeleCloud and rely on each other in the business, but also be able to springboard some of the knowledge that we understand back to other people, to open source communities, to business communities, and really start to understand where we belong inside a larger picture around understanding and using the cloud. So today, what I'm mainly going to cover is about securing cloud accounts, understanding Cloudsploit, understanding Prowler, the automation of some of the scans, understanding infrastructure compliance as part of infrastructure as code, and then thinking about how we can go further with what we have, how we can push it even more to adapt to what the needs of your business are going to be. A repeated thing that I talk about to people is that in many ways, when we're operating cloud as a service, and especially when we're operating in scale, it becomes part of an API that we communicate to, and the API is really just there to deliver us details about resources and configuration that we want. We're going to pass a request, we're going to get a response. I do very little operationally inside the AWS console apart from potentially looking at some logs, and I do a lot of work with Terraform or with AWS command line to actually be able to deliver parts of these as a process that communicates with AWS as an API. So that's the first thing I want people to get across, is that actually when we think about AWS, it's an extension of your solution. It gives you the ability to request compute and request storage and request processing, but it's not the end goal of it. It's part of the solution. And what we're doing largely with cloud scanning is we're looking for warnings over vulnerabilities or misconfigurations about what we have. We're looking for adherence to best practices, especially with security methods. And we're looking for some kind of level of remediation advice. Now, one of the difficulties often with remediation advice is that your specific needs may be slightly unique to you. Now, we obviously deal with a world where we're making a lot of generic solutions, but the actual remediation may be specific. So you can come out with an account scan that highlights hundreds of issues inside your account, and understanding where they are just slight best practice changes or where they are actual significant vulnerabilities is part of the role that I think HeleCloud plays in getting people to understand what kinds of security issues are the most important for them to chase down. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is about Cloudsploit. Now, Cloudsploit previously was a separate company and was acquired by Aqua Security, which run a whole different host of security based tools, especially focused around cloud native development. It's open source and it has available scanning tools for AWS, GCP and Azure. You can run it internally, you can self-host it, or you can use the SaaS platform, and it's written in JavaScript. And you can see from here that we've got the setup of the website, the GitHub, and we've built a container if you want to use Cloudsploit on your own that you can just go and pull from a registry. So you could run docker run and this container, which is at the bottom. And what Cloudsploit does is it gives a very good overview into the account practices that you've got running inside your tools. Now, I'm just going to run a quick video that I've prepared in advance, and you'll see part of the reason why we prepare these videos in advance shortly. So we're going to run Cloudsploit over an entire account, and what that does, it does a series of API calls. So it says, for example, what do you have in EU West 1? What do you have in EU West 2? What EC2 units do you have? What security groups do you have? What VPCs do you have? What setup do you have for your users? What IAM roles do you have? And it will query hundreds of times against the API and collate those details back to Cloudsploit, which will then parse them and try to make sense out of where you are positioned in terms of security. And by applying specific rules to it, it's going to give you back a set of ideas about how you're running. So you can see that we got back hundreds of okay. And that's, generally okay is what we want. And you'll see that I think for this account that I'm running it against, which is my sandbox account, there aren't any issues at the moment, which is the ideal solution that you want. There's also probably no issues because there is very little running inside my sandbox account. Now, the next tool I wanted to talk about was called Prowler. Prowler is also an open source tool, and you can see the project on the right hand side. And the main difference that I see between Cloudsploit and Prowler is that Prowler is a lot more focused, well, entirely focused on AWS security. And it has the ability, I think, to be slightly more in depth for what you're checking, and it gives a deeper scan of your account. Now, for the majority of regular uses, Cloudsploit may be sufficient, but if you're looking at really doing in-depth remediation, then I think that Prowler is probably a slightly better tool for AWS. And please put things in the comments if you want to disagree with me or have some other things that you want to follow through. This is based around the CIS Amazon Web Services Foundation benchmark, and it's written mainly in Bash using some AWS CLI and Python to do that. And you can see we've got a container that you can run there, and I'm actually going to give you an example of running some of these containers inside GitLab CI shortly. So what we can see here is that we're going to run Prowler, and we're just going to run a single check, because actually if I waited for the entirety of Prowler to run, we would have to wait kind of 25 minutes for it to complete. So we're going to run a single check inside Prowler, which will load the Prowler application and then start questioning things. It's going to tell me which user it's using, and this check, which is check 41, and you'll see check 41 again shortly, is going to say we have certain security groups that are open. So EU West 2 has 3 security groups that are opening port 22 to the wider internet, and that's generally seen as a fail. We all should know from our architectural diagrams that we should be getting access to our we shouldn't have direct access from the wider internet just to port 22. We should be going through a bastion. We should be going through other tools to be able to secure that access slightly further. And we should then see that this completes as we move forwards. And you can now understand why I go through the process of pre-recording these scans so that people can see them without issue. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is actually starting to look at how we can automate this inside CI, because although we like to think that we're going to have all the time in the world, actually automation means that we get the ability to scale out our knowledge and build transparency into what we're doing. So I'm using a quick project here that I've called Webhook Cloud Split Prowler, and the reason that I've called it Webhook Cloud Split Prowler is because the aim is that you use a webhook to trigger it, and it runs Cloudsploit and it runs Prowler. So if I quickly shift into the tool that's going to look at this, we can have a quick investigate of what's happening inside GitLab CI for webhook, Cloudsploit, Prowler. So we can see from our browser here that we've got a pipeline that's running some credentials, it's doing a Cloudsploit test, and it's doing a Prowler test. And we can see that our tests are passing or failing as appropriate. Now what you can see in this tool is that generally speaking, we are loading up Cloudsploit and we are loading up Prowler and running specific tests in them. And this is running on a specific account. So from the project overview, I can look at the GitLab CI tool for what's running, and we can look through and say, well, we're going to go through 3 stages. We're going to have a credential things, which is potentially to build access. We're then going to run Cloudsploit scans. We're then going to run Prowler, and we're going to store any paths that we have. We're going to run the IAM Prowler checks. We're going to run the CloudWatch checks, and we're going to run EC2 checks. And what we can then go back and look at is we can say, well, we've run these checks, have we passed or failed? So in actual fact, we can see that for the most recent pipeline that we've run, we can see that Cloudsploit is saying, yeah, we have passed, which is, you know, a good position to be in. We have passed for Cloudsploit. There's a lot of not applicables. We can go back and see not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. So Cloudsploit has gone and passed all of our checks for this, and you can see we've got, you know, lots and lots of checks that it's running through, which is brilliant. And we can then go and say, well, we were also running this in Prowler. Prowler has come up with some slightly different setup. So Prowler has looked into CloudWatch, and it's failed to get proper credentials. Brilliant. This is why we don't do live demos again, right? But what that will do, we'll see later on, is that it's actually going to scan inside our accounts. Now, if I move on to the kind of next level of automation, because really what we want to do is to take part of the way that we're building infrastructure, which I'm using Terraform, you know, 99% of the infrastructure I build is in Terraform, and so it has a real infrastructure lifecycle, and we can start to look at the total account usage of what we've got running. And especially this is useful if you have, for example, an account that is only running specific Terraform. You've got proper separation between your accounts, and you can then continually run every time you're running Terraform. You can keep rescanning your accounts to give you an awareness of when issues are happening, and especially if it's going to highlight drift in your account that is not part of Terraform. So if someone has logged into the console and given root access that has nothing to do with the Terraform you're running, then it's going to give you awareness that that's already happened, and it's going to say, well, hang on a minute, the Terraform is fine. Let's say the Terraform is fine. However, someone has changed something else in your account, and that's going to be an incorrect level of change. So that's opening security issues for you. And you can also get an immediate awareness of the effects of some of your deployments if you wish to use this as kind of an awareness tool. It's not ideal for doing that, and I'd say that, you know, there's other tools for being able to apply security scanning to your Terraform. The two I often think of is TFSec, which is a great tool for doing scanning of Terraform as it's written, and there's also Terraform Compliance, which is going to scan the plans that you write. And there are others on the market, which I say the market available that you can use for that. But we got to get towards that continual compliance. And what we've got here is a secondary pipeline that's called Terraform Cloud Split Prowler. And you can see what I've done there with the name. I'm using Terraform and Cloudsploit and Prowler. And what it's doing infrastructure as code. It's going to do some compliance security checking, and then it becomes like an application of DevSecOps because we're embedding security, our security processes that we have agreed on, into our tools that we're running. And so we're getting towards having a process for delivering security. So I'm going to quickly switch back into the browser and look at this secondary project. And you can see that we've got here a project that is very similar to what we were previously running. Now I've also got some Terraform in here, and I've done some checks, so I can just look at what those checks are going to be, and this is for keeping checks in. If I wish to write my own custom checks, I could do that and write custom checks. However, I haven't done. You can see I've made some Terraform. So the Terraform that I've written in here is going to be setting up a particular part of my infrastructure. And I can say, well, I'm going to make some bad decisions about SSH. So what have I done? I have done the worst kind of thing that we saw earlier. Check 41 is going to be opening port 22 to the outside world. So I can ensure that my changes are complete. Now, what happens if I go and run this as an entire process? So what it's going to do, we're going to start running. Let's say I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just say I want to start my changes from the start again. And so to do that, I am going to make, let's say we can make a change to the README, an appropriate change to the README, what all items need. We're going to add a new file and I'm going to call it README. All of your projects should have README files, so please do that in the future. Terraform Cloud Split Prowler, a tool to build a process to check in account security before and after infrastructure as code deployments. I'm going to say now I own it, right? So when I commit those changes in, it's going to kick off our process from the start again, and we will be able to see that our project is running through its pipeline. So you can see our pipeline has started for adding that README, and we're going to then be running through the stages of our pipeline to be able to deliver that infrastructure, and then we're going to be able to understand what we have before. So we've run through our format checking of Terraform. We're then going to validate our Terraform, and then we're going to do a pre-secure stage. So this is going to run Cloudsploit and Prowler before I run any changes to infrastructure, and so we're making sure that actually my Cloudsploit and Prowler tool is going to check my infrastructure, my platform before we start, and then it's going to make sure that it is secure. So as we move forwards, which should be happening shortly, we can see that Cloudsploit is going to be running, and Cloudsploit obviously is going to be pulling down my latest container from the HeleCloud container registry, which is very similar to the Prowler one that we're going to be running as well. And I called these Prowler pre and Cloudsploit pre because that's generally what they are. They're pre-checks for it. And as we start to see these executing, which should happen very shortly, and at this point, this is the time when I say, if anyone has any questions, then I'd love to have some questions in the comments. Okay, so we can see this check running. We're going to only be running check 41. You'll notice that check 41 is a recurring thing. So we can see that at the moment we've got pass. There are no failures inside check 41, which is about open ports on port 22. And so Prowler is going to say, very thankfully, at the moment, Prowler is going to say, yes, you're absolutely fine. And we should see that also inside Cloudsploit, it has no problems. We could download the artifacts if we wanted to see the JSON of the artifacts, and that will say that we're passing, but we don't really need to do that at the moment. And you could then transfer those JSON files to somewhere else if you chose to. We're then going to run our Terraform plan very similarly to how we would normally expect to run our project. So we've done an init, we've done a validate, we're then moving on to do a plan, and then we will execute that plan as a Terraform apply on the next stage. So we can see we've got 7 items that we're going to add, and we have our bad security group that we're going to be adding. And you'll see public shh as opposed to public SSH. Yeah, so that job has succeeded. We've created a plan for doing that, and that will have moved on to now to the apply stage. So that's then going to be applying our Terraform. When I manually trigger this action, which of course I'm going to manually trigger now. At least I aim to manually trigger it now. We should be on to apply now. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to apply this. And then after the apply, the Presecure is going to run, and we're going to see, hopefully we're going to see, as that happens, that our checks start to fail. So we can see our apply happening. I realise I've got to update the Terraform version that we're running, not 0.12.20 anymore. And really what we start to see as an example here is that we're understanding what's running in our accounts. So yes, we have gone and created this, 7 resources added, brilliant. We've gone and created those accounts, and we're actually going to start being able to understand our account level security. So I knew I was secure here. I know I was definitely secure here. And because of GitLab CI, it's moved on, because I normally would just have this as auto applying, but it made it much more useful if I didn't auto apply. So I'm going to retry these now, which is going to run our post secure checks. And that's going to scan inside our AWS account, and it will scan every region that we have access to. So I believe that I was applying changes into EU West 2, so the London region. And what we should start to see is that after these complete, we should have a failure, and therefore we can say, well, we have introduced an issue at some point in here. And in the same way that could be, say, telling us that we've either introduced an issue here, or there is a separate issue that someone has introduced some drift into our total accounts as that happens. So Cloudsploit is going to tell us that we have a fail. We have a subnet that is only using one VPC. We have another fail up here. We have a security group that is open to SSH. And so we are running with a difficulty. We have some fails around security groups as well, that we are running with one inbound and one outbound rule. So we should only have specific rules that are set up, and we don't have flow logs properly enabled inside our EC2. So we've gone back with 3 or 4 issues that have now been highlighting what the problems with our infrastructure deployment is. And we should also see that Prowler in its specific runs, it will have failed, and I could go and see what those checks are as well if I chose to, but Prowler will have failed with very similar setup. And for anyone who is wanting to look, this is the Cloudsploit CI Docker file, and then this is the Prowler CI Docker file, and you can go and get these as you wish from the container registries that's available in GitLab, of course. Now, really, what we can start to do with the iteration of this, we can start to say, well, we're going to start checking our accounts all of the time. Should we be checking them every day? Should we be checking them multiple times a day? Should we then be passing these logs out into another tool to be able to ingest them and understand the auditing capabilities of what we need? And should we integrate further tools? Should we be running policy as code to be able to reduce the amount of issues with our cloud account security that we may find? And really, it becomes up to you which direction you take forwards. Now, you've seen that Cloudsploit and Prowler both have really capable tool sets to be able to check your whole account. And that is exactly what they're doing. They're going to check your whole account every single time. And that really starts to be able to give you the values of driving kind of a process-driven idea of cloud account security, and looking through those tools and seeing what the remediation is, which a lot of them will recommend, will actually start to deliver you a lot more secure setup for your tools and your solutions, and you will be building a more secure future for your business in AWS. Now, I would love to have some questions from people, and I'm really interested in anything that people may wish to move forward with in these kind of areas, and especially if there's anything that HeleCloud can do to help augment your teams and give them the best start with running wherever account security. I'd be really pleased to see that. So, have my email, and please do ask me questions, and I will attempt to give you the best solutions that can drive your account security forwards. I'm really pleased that you've joined me today, and hopefully you've learned a lot from understanding about account security and how that's going to drive forward extra value for you. Now, I believe we've got a number of other items coming up shortly, and you're going to really enjoy them. And always keep a lookout. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel that this video should be on, and we've got videos coming out all the time, and we have regular webinars and regular sessions, and you can try and catch up with us at conferences and those kind of things in the future. So like, share, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time, and look forward to receiving your questions, and hope you have a really, really great day. So that was me, Will Hall, talking about AWS Cloud Account Security with Cloudsploit, Prowler, and GitLab CI. Have a great day.